Well, we are reaching our fourth and final part of a four-part series that we were not anticipating to be a four-part series, but yet here we are. And we have been looking at the most common questions asked about church revitalization, 23 of them, in fact. And so I hope you have been able to listen along with us as we get to these final five questions. It's always good to have a good final countdown. There's just I love it. I love marking off. You're not a checklist person, are you?
Hmm
You are
I
a
have
checklist
I
person?
have a checklist app.
Yeah, I don't think I realized that about you.
Yeah,
So,
I just checked off my last one of 23 items, so I erased them all, and I'm getting ready to do my next checklist apps.
in all my years of growing up, I don't think I ever remember you having checklists anywhere.
I had them on in writing. I think Sam used to actually carry my checklist with him as we clean rooms, and we go room by room, and he'd say, "We need to do this, we need to do that." Probably tells you something about him, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But I love checklists. In fact, I have a whole project management software for my life. I'm not kidding. It literally has everything that I
Can you see
do.
the one there that says "do" with the check mark?
Yes. So if you're watching on YouTube, he's showing an app. If you're not watching on YouTube, he's showing an app. You can't see it, but I did not know that. But there's joy as I'm looking at these final five questions that I'm looking forward to finishing this one, marking it off the list, and so I'm excited to get there. So before we jump into it, though, we do want to thank Cheney Associates. They are one of our sponsors for this podcast. They do an amazing work for churches. In fact, that's only they only work with churches. That's it. They don't do
Hmm
any other type of organization or business. They're only accounting for churches. And so, if you're looking, maybe you have a bookkeeper who's going to be retiring soon, and you're trying to figure out how to replace them. Cheney Associates very well might be your solution. So go check them out at cheneyassociates.com/church answers. They do just such great work, and we're so thankful for them. They're fun too. They're a good team over there. You will enjoy talking with them and working with them. It's not a painful process at all. For some reason, they make accounting fun. I don't know if they do it.
Well, the reason behind it is Steve Cheney is the consummate entrepreneur.
Uh,
You think of a CPA, you think of, oh, we've got to checklist this, we got to get this done.
hmm.
Well, Steve Cheney and his team are highly entrepreneurial, so there's a lot of energy there, and that energy breeds a lot of fun that is taking place. So,
Yeah.
great people, great time, and yes, we love those folks.
Yeah. So if you want to know what it's like to have fun in accounting, go check out cheneyassociates.com/church answers. We ended last podcast and you were excited about this next question because it has to do with smaller churches. And I think we might have to define that. But let me ask the question. What are some unique challenges for the smaller church? Again, we're talking about in terms of revitalization. We're answering 23 of the most common questions about church revitalization. And we're now been asked the question. So, Dad, I want you to answer this. What are some unique challenges for the smaller church?
Let me say one other thing. I
Okay.
forgot about it. Go to the new podcast for Cheney Associates, Church
Yes.
Advisory Podcast. Brand new. I listened to the first one on housing allowance. I thought I knew everything there was to know about housing allowance, and I learned more by listening to those two guys talk about it. So let's answer the question. What are some unique challenges to the smaller church? Let's define smaller church. Statistically, the
Mm-hmm.
bottom 50% of churches, or half of them, of the smaller churches, are, depending on who's counting, below 60 in attendance. I
Yeah.
say below 55, some others say 65, but half the churches are below 65 in attendance. But the reality of it is, in some aspects, a smaller church is really below 200 in attendance, maybe 150. Let's say 150, because there's certain resources that you can have
Mm-hmm.
at 100, a little over 100 in attendance that you cannot otherwise. Now, a church of 150 in attendance is a large church today by statistical standards, but it may feel smaller because of resources or the lack of resources. So let's start there. What are some unique challenges of smaller church? Well, let's define small. I've mentioned the first one. A smaller church does not have all the resources of a larger church.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what I want to keep in mind. You have some resources a larger church does not have. You have the ability to connect with everybody all the time,
Mm-hmm.
pastorally, especially in the under 65 church, under 60 church. And when the guests come in, you know that. So there's a big advantage. I
Right.
do think statistically, We are moving toward an equilibrium where a typical church, typical, not necessarily median, but a typical church is going to be right at the 100 mark. And that's going to be, there'll be churches that are smaller, there'll be churches that are larger, but 100 is going to be typical. And I think that once you get past 100, you start facing challenges and you start facing some things that the smaller church does not. But a smaller church does not have as much money. A
Right.
smaller church often has a family that is a power family in the church for good or for bad. A smaller church may not be able to keep up its facilities, going back to the resource issue, but that is not necessarily the case. Being a smaller church may actually be advantageous.
Yeah, yeah. I can think of some other things for unique challenges for the smaller church. And then we've talked about this before. Is you might be more heavy in a particular demographic.
Yeah.
As a smaller church, it's harder to be more, age spread out, and
Hmm.
so that's a unique challenge depending on whichever direction you lean. That age, and so when you have a first time guest come in who maybe does not match the predominant demographic of the church, it's definitely going to be a challenge. There are definitely ways to overcome that, but that's unique versus a larger church. Even if you have a smaller percentage of, say, senior adults in a younger church, there's going to be enough for someone who's older to connect with.
Hmm.
But again, we talked about this before with churches that need revitalization. Typically, older congregation, if you have a family come in with a baby, they're going to feel like they stick out. And so it's having a plan of how to overcome that and anticipating it. That's so much of it is just anticipating what could happen in revitalization and,
Now,
and coming up with it.
let me get this right. I think you and I have this commonality. You were a member of a church where your baby was the only baby.
Hmm.
I
Yep.
was a member of a church where our baby, named Jess, was the only baby.
Okay.
So you've
Yeah.
had, now you had two older brothers who were picking on you all the time, even at that young age. But you were the baby. So I just remember that you went to a church while you were in seminary where you had the only baby in the
Yeah.
church.
But the reason I was there was because it was a revitalization effort.
Hmm.
The reason I was there was because the lead pastor said, I want you to come help. Here's our church. Before I even stepped foot in the church, he says, here's the church. We're older, we're rural, but we have an opportunity to reach young families.
And it
So
happened.
he found me, brought me in. And so, yeah, while we were the only baby, it was because I knew what I was walking into. And he empowered me and gave me some ability to lead and to start a new Sunday school uh, class for young families.
I
Uh,
still love that pastor to this
oh yeah,
day.
fantastic. And so the church grew from like 85 to 115 in less than a year.
Mm.
Um, and it was young adult driven. That, I mean, literally what it was. So we're talking about smaller challenges. I guess we're offering solutions as well. If you want to start reaching, go find someone that you can begin to raise up as a leader before they even come into your church.
It worked with your church.
Why not? Why not? And so that way, again, it's thinking about what could be and beginning to recruit people that way.
Right.
I was churched. This wasn't reaching the lost, but it was like, if we want to reach lost young families, we at least have to have something for them there. And so it grew pretty quickly.
I
I
love that
remember
story.
it didn't take but a month or two to get that Sunday school class up and running. They gave us a room, gave us a dry erase board,
Fixed up the nursery for Cannon.
fix up the nursery. I think we've told that story before. I think the underlining, what do I do with this? Whatever the unique challenge is for the church, there's still ways you can overcome it.
Right.
So don't let them get in the way. But they do. As a smaller church, you do have some unique ones. Question 20. Again, that was question 19. We just answered question 20. How do I find the time to prepare sermons and lead in revitalization?
The
So again, this is
question
a
is
question.
the question is, how do I find time to prepare sermons? Period. Because if it's not a revitalization, you're going to have other things that are keeping you busy.
Right.
So the ultimate question is not how do I find time to prepare sermons and lead in revitalization. There's a presumption there that revitalization is going to keep a pastor busier than other things. A pastor's going to have his plate full regardless.
Mhm.
So how do you find time to prepare sermons, Jess Rayner?
Yeah. You protect your calendar. That
Absolutely.
that's what I do. So I break mine up into 4 parts. Monday is just spending time in the Word over the passage, and then Tuesday is my big sermon prep day. It's where I spend 8 to 10 hours on a Tuesday.
Mm.
And I don't. It's very rare that I book anything on a Tuesday. I don't. I don't. I maybe will have a lunch here and there if I have to. If it, I know it's a busy week if I have something scheduled on a Tuesday,
Hmm.
because that means I couldn't find time anywhere else in the week, which is problematic sometimes. But yeah, so Tuesdays and then Thursdays. So Thursdays is again I follow up, and I really like to have my sermon done by Thursday afternoon. That's usually my goal. But by then I'm well into it. But I've got to start earlier in the week than later in the week. But that's me. That's my how I
I
work.
think, but the point is protecting time.
That's
You're
it.
bivocational, you're doing another job. You still have to find the hours. You may not be able to give 15 hours to sermon prep, but you may give 5 hours. And
Hmm.
you say, I wish I could do 15, but I'm going to do 5. And this is when I'm going to do it.
Yep.
And set it aside the best you can. That's the way I write books, Jess. You look at my calendar, it's unusual for me to have something on Monday, Tuesday, or Friday. Now, if I do, it means it's an add-on, but that's
Hmm.
when I write. I write in those large blocks, and at my elderly state, I can do more of that than I used to otherwise. So
Yeah.
it's the
And,
same principle.
and again, I would say protecting your calendar. It needs to be large chunks.
Yes.
It's for me. I bare minimum I'm gonna do a 4 hour chunk at a time. Like
And
that's
if,
if
yeah,
I can. I mean, sometimes it's an hour or two, but typically it takes 30 minutes to even get back into sermon prep. And so if you can try and do 4 hours, like block your calendar 4 hour chunks.
and find a way to avoid as much interruption as you can.
Hmm.
People, if you do it, don't do it in your office. If you have an office in the church, I mean, hey, is the pastor in?
Well, I do.
But again, our church is a little different in that we don't have a regular flow of traffic.
I actually do it on our busiest day.
Okay.
I'm convinced you, but it actually works out well because people just the church knows it. That I've set that precedence. Tuesday. So if I'm my door shut, they know. And they respect it. They really do.
You trained them because you started the church.
Right, right. So it's good. Yeah, it's just finding the time, protecting it, and communicating it. Eliminate distractions. It's there. So that's one that it goes across not just church realization, but does it go across a lot of different areas of ministry. Question 21. Again, we're working our way. We're getting close. Question 21. How do I start a new members class?
Well, if you just want a total resource, we have it. And we answered the question by providing a resource, and
Mhm.
we'll put the link into it where, hey, this gives you step by step of either how to start a new members class or how to revamp one. So that's it. Just remember these 3 words with new members classes: information. You want to provide information. Expectation. You want to tell them what's expected of them. And assimilation. You want them to have a path of discipleship. Assimilation. Those are the 3 things you need to cover. I am all for shorter membership classes, provide additional information later than these multi-day, multi-weeks. But that's me. But I still think I have enough evidence to say the shorter ones are more effective.
Yeah. Um, you might even have to start by writing the material. Now, obviously, we have things here for you at Church Answers if you don't want to spend the time doing it, but you've got to come up with the content. It's like, how do I start? Well, what does it mean to be a member?
Mm-hmm.
How have you defined that at your church? That's the starting point, which typically raises another question. Well, if I begin to define that as a church doing revitalization, what do I do about all the other people who've gone through it?
Yeah,
What's your thought
that's
on that?
my thought is to grandfather.
Yeah.
Just don't don't have a new starting point for someone who's been there a while. Hopefully, they'll be influenced by the others. Uh, and Jess, you were instrumental in my writing my best-selling book, I'm a Church Member, which is the most widely used for new member classes. And basically, it is, hey, this is what it means to be a church member,
Hmm.
and that's another tool you can use. I'm a church member in
Yeah.
that process.
Yeah. So main thing is creating some content, getting it ready, define what a member is, um, find the people who are new in the church, and ask them to come be a part of the class.
And we'll put a link to the new member class toolkit that we have that is all the nuts and bolts of putting it together with a lot of the stuff already prepared for you.
Yeah, and one thing you've mentioned in the past that just popped in my brain, Dad, is you ask some established members in the church to come help be hosts during the membership class.
Yep.
So while they're not taking the class, they're hearing the information.
Yes.
And so it's a great way of doing that. So starting a new members class, focus on the people who are new in the church. And you may, I don't know, you may call it a members class. You may, you can figure out a name for it. And sometimes you can do, really a whole assimilation process for
Mm-hmm.
new people. You probably should have just an introductory class first,
Mm-hmm.
and build it that way. But to put it, as succinctly as you can, get the information, invite people to come, and teach
Put,
them what it means to become
put it on
a
the
member.
calendar ahead of time, even before anybody signs up, because that'll show us a priority.
Yeah. 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 Starting new things can be tough, especially if you are thinking about how to start a new outreach in your church. That can be tough. Good thing is we have one of our partners who is ready to help you with that. We partner with Upward Sports here at Church Answers, and they are all about taking off the work of starting something new. They're all about coming alongside of you and helping you develop a sports ministry outreach program. I don't know if that's their verbiage, but that's how I'm describing it. They
Mm-hmm.
are all about taking your church size, your church budget, your church facilities, and making it, and your church community. That's a big thing. They want to know your community as well. They're going to take all four of those pieces and come together and help you figure out how to develop a sports ministry. So they're doing some great work, Dad. I know you have some ongoing conversation with them, doing some great things.
But as a matter of fact, on a future The Church Answers podcast, we'll be interviewing a pastor who actually has done the ministry very well, the Upward ministry, and we'll be interviewing the executive director of
Okay.
Upward, whom I have not met yet. So it'll be a fun opportunity to do so. So that's
Okay.
that's coming soon.
Yeah.
But that kind of gets us into number 22. What does effective evangelism look like in a healthy church? First of all, it's happening. That's number one. What do you mean? Well, in most churches, evangelism is not happening. So number
Hmm.
one. Number two, it has a natural relational component to it. I'm hesitant to say that because some people will just have relationships and won't ever tell anybody about Jesus,
Hmm.
but it has a natural relationship to it. Just like Upward, you develop a relationship
Right.
with someone who's coming into the sports league, and that sports league opportunity leads to an opportunity to share the gospel. So that's one aspect of it. And the third aspect of it is there is some inherent accountability,
Hmm.
because if you're not accountable for evangelism personally and in the church, there's a good chance that the enemy will distract you from it.
Yeah. Yeah. That is effective evangelism. Um, at the end of the day, I think you got to ask the question: is anyone coming to Christ?
There's
And
there's the metric.
it is. So, I mean, effective evangelism. What does that look like? Well, is someone coming to Christ? and and then if not, why not? And so there are all these key pieces that need to happen. You can look at what the church is doing it. Are you doing a community service? And we've talked about this before. Like, you need to know what you're actually doing. So many
Yep.
churches get out there and they like, hey, we're gonna go clean the local school. That's great.
Why?
Yeah, but that's not evangelism. That's
Right.
community service.
Right.
Some churches will put on a local event. Either they'll do it offsite at a park or they'll do it at their place. And they will provide some kind of event, which is an outreach, right?
It
This
is.
is you putting a name out there. This is you doing some of those outreach things. Um, that's what it is. You're reaching out. The third tier is actually sharing the gospel. And I think that's at the core. I mean, that's Matthew 28. It's what we talk about. What evangelism is going and making disciples
Mm-hmm.
and sharing the gospel. So you can have community service with evangelism. You can have outreach with evangelism. Or you could just have evangelism where you're teaching people in their everyday lives as they go out to share the gospel. And
Which
so,
is what we try to do in the Hope Initiative as well.
right.
We try to establish that culture by doing something for 30 days to establish the habit and the culture. And so that is the whole purpose of the Hope Initiative, to create a culture of prayer and evangelism, period.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, our church, we do community service and we do evangelism. We don't do a lot of outreach at our church. We don't do, events. That's not something we do. We're very involved with other local ministries. We supply food for kids in need. We build beds. We do a lot of community service. But then the other side is we're really pushing for evangelism. Somewhere along the way, I guess we're doing some outreach. We have invite cards. We tell people to go out and invite. So there's a little bit of that kind of just come to church outreach
Hmm.
mindset. But the ultimate goal is we want to share Christ. So effectively understand what you're doing, and then are people coming to Christ?
And
That
then the
that to me is
last,
the way to answer that question.
that's the metric. There's the outcome. And then the last question that we have of these 23 questions has
That's right.
taken us 4 episodes. By the way, 2 of them dropped today. If you're watching it or
Hmm.
listening to it for the first time, today means when we dropped it. And then last week we did 2 as well. So you can watch it on YouTube. You can listen to it on your favorite podcasting app, and you can tell us that you liked it, that you subscribed to it, all of those good things. But this last one is, how do I start an effective process of discipleship in the church? You first define what discipleship is to you.
Yeah. We have just a few minutes left. Dad, do you want to do you want to define discipleship? You want to define evangelism? Do you...
Well, mine are succinct for discipleship. Discipleship is becoming more like Christ, but that does not tell you what to do. That
Hmm.
just tells you what it looks like if it really works. What does it mean to become more like Christ? So when you talk about discipleship, there are different categories. There's personal discipleship, reading the Bible, praying. There is one-on-one discipleship or two-on-one, where you have someone mentoring you or walking alongside you, or accountability partner. Then there's church-based discipleship,
Right.
that is a discipleship ministry within the church. This question tells me that it's probably more church-based, which I think every church should have.
Hmm.
What does it look like to take someone and have a process where they become a truer disciple of Christ?
Yep. And then, I mean, depending on what your small group ministry looks like as well. I mean, that
Mhm.
plays a major part of it. It does go back to church based, but discipleship exists based off your definition, becoming more like Christ. It should exist in every part of the church. I guess the harder thing though is like, how do you know it's happening? And I think that's where a lot of churches go down to more of this one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-few mindset. They see the multiplication because it's tangible and it's
Yep,
trackable.
absolutely. It is. Still can be tracked, though, to some extent, if it's program based or if it's church based.
Mhm.
You can have metrics for number of people in groups, metrics for number of people in prayer ministry, metric for number of people in evangelism ministry. It's not perfect, but that's what we advocated. Eric Geiger and I did in Simple Church. Have a
Mhm.
way to measure what's going on. It's not perfect, but it's better than having zero accountability at all.
Yeah, and I'm big on too. Like, discipleship does come through the church leaders as well. Being the lead pastor, I take personal responsibility of evangelism and discipleship. I get you could there's one they go together. I'm not just for common just for language here. I'm out sharing the gospel. I'm out discipling. In fact, yesterday I've been discipling a high school junior. He came to Christ and had a chance to
Oh,
lead him to Christ, and so we've been doing an ongoing discipleship, and that's just me meeting with him.
yeah,
It's helping him understand what it means to become like Christ, because
I love it.
he had no idea like what it means to follow Jesus. He just came and he's like, I need Jesus, and then he came to Christ. It's like, all right, I'm going to teach you what it means to follow him now. And so just you should see tangible results. Again, it's kind of like evangelism.
Yep,
It's effective if it's working. It's effective
yep.
if you're doing things. So many times it's just go and do it. So many people want to create the whole process. They want to create all these things. Sometimes you just need to go do it.
Okay, so I got to. We're gonna finish up, Jess. But
All right.
I got a pastor who says, "All right, just give me two simple steps to begin. Don't give me the whole process." I say, one, make sure your sermon disciples people.
Sure.
We forget about that,
Yeah.
and you know me, Jess. I started handwriting uh, notes, and I've noticed that a lot more people in the church are now beginning to do that. And so I love it when the sermon becomes more and more discipler in the lives of us individually. And then the second thing I say is emphasize groups. Get
Hmm.
people into small groups, community groups, life groups, Sunday school groups, whatever the name may be. Get them in groups, because a lot of life change and discipleship is going to take place there. I sent you a text last night about someone whose father has died, and who was the first ones to minister to them? His community group.
Right.
We were there for him. We were
Right.
talking to him, and that's the way ministry should take place. It's not the pastor doing all the ministry; it is the pastor equipping the saints to do ministry. And groups are one of the key ways.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean there's a whole lot there. That's such a hard to answer it fully in such a short amount of time. But if you think of revitalization, just start with one person in the church. Help them grow and become more like Christ. Just start meeting with one person, sitting down with them, open up God's word, talk about what it means and how they live it out in their life.
Yep.
That's just start with that. Just start with one doing that. So,
and if you're asking what is the best way to do accounting and finance and bookkeeping in my church, where do I start? You call Cheney and Associates.
Yeah. Or you go on their website. I mean, I guess people do call. But
eventually they call.
Eventually. Go on the website, check out CheneyAssociates.com/church answers and learn a little bit about them, and then give them a call, send them an email.
Yep. Set up that appointment.
No
obligation.
They will help you out. Again, if you maybe you don't have someone who's running your books, maybe you have someone who's going to be retiring soon. Maybe it's you need help. Whatever it is, when it comes to your finances and bookkeeping in your church, check out Cheney Associates. They're there to help you. They'll take care of the numbers so you can go lead your church. Check them out. We love them. We're so thankful for what they're doing. Check out their podcast as well. We mentioned that earlier. They got some great stuff. Well, Dad, we did it. 23 questions
in 4 episodes. Kind of proud of it. I think we've created a new resource just for anybody that wants to go through a quick overview of church revitalization in 4 episodes.
Yeah. And I just checked off the last question, so that felt good.
Checking off things is good.
That felt good.
I'm ready to check off the last chapter of this book because my publisher is saying, we need another proposal for your next book. I said, I've got one that's about to be published in August. I got one where I'm about to be done with the manuscript. Now you want another one beyond that.
Add it to your list.
It's there now.
Well, thank you guys so much for being with us today. Whether you're with us on YouTube, again, if you're on YouTube, hit the like button, drop a comment, let us know. If you're listening with us on whatever your favorite podcasting app is, thank you for being there as well. If you have the ability to give us a thumbs up,
and a few people listen to us and on the website too. They just go directly to churchanswers.com, and that's where they follow us. That's good too. I don't want to leave them out.
However you're listening today, thank you so much for being with us. 4-part series that we looked at of answering the most commonly asked questions about church revitalization. It's been good. It's been fun. We've enjoyed it. We finished it. We checked it off. But we look forward to seeing you on the next episode as we continue just to answer those questions. We get it. There's a lot of questions about church. We hope that we are providing some of those answers for you. We'll see you then.